My name is Bernice. I am 58 years old. Last month I buried my husband of 35 years. Walter was my everything. And on the day I said goodbye to him, standing in a church filled with people who loved him, my own daughter-in-law looked at my dress and called me classless. She mocked me in front of everyone. What she did not know was that dress cost $80,000, and I was the founder of the company she worked for. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you are watching from today. Drop a comment below. And if you have ever been judged by someone who had no idea who they were talking to, hit that like button and subscribe, because this story is going to change the way you see everything. I need to take you back to the beginning, not just to understand what happened at that funeral, but to understand who I am and who Walter was to me. I grew up in a small apartment in Newark, New Jersey. My father worked at a factory. My mother was a seamstress. She spent her days hunched over a sewing machine mending clothes for wealthy families who lived in the nicer parts of town. I used to sit beside her, watching her fingers move like magic across the fabric. She taught me everything: how to cut patterns, how to stitch invisible seams, how to make something beautiful out of almost nothing. By the time I was 16, I was making my own dresses, simple ones at first, then more complicated designs. I dreamed of having my own fashion label someday, but that seemed impossibly far away for a girl like me. We did not have money for fashion school. We barely had money for groceries some weeks. When I was 22, I was working at a dry cleaner during the day and sewing at night. I would go to the public library on weekends to study fashion history, looking at old French magazines and books about Parisian couture. That is where I met Walter. He was sitting at a table across from me, surrounded by stacks of books about 19th century literature. He had kind eyes and messy hair, and he kept glancing over at me like he wanted to say something but could not find the words. Finally, after about an hour, he walked over and asked what I was reading. I showed him a book about the history of haute couture. It was in French, and I was struggling to understand most of it. Walter smiled and said he could help. He was getting his doctorate in comparative literature and spoke fluent French. He sat down next to me and started translating. We spent the whole afternoon together, and then the next weekend, and the one after that. Walter never cared that I came from nothing. He never cared that I could not afford fancy restaurants or expensive clothes. He saw something in me that I was still learning to see in myself. He believed in my talent before I did. We got married when I was 23. It was a tiny ceremony at City Hall. My mother made my dress. Walter wore his only suit. We could not afford a honeymoon, so we spent our wedding night in our cramped studio apartment, eating Chinese takeout and dreaming about the future. Walter encouraged me to start my own business. He said my designs were too beautiful to keep hidden. So I did. I started making dresses in our living room and selling them to friends and neighbors. Word spread slowly, then faster. I named my company Maison Elise after my mother. She passed away the year before I started it, and I wanted to honor her memory. She never got to see what I built, but I like to think she knows somehow. Within 5 years, Maison Elise had grown from a living room operation to a small workshop. Within 10, we had a boutique in Manhattan. Within 15, we were an internationally recognized luxury brand. But here's the thing about me. I never wanted to be famous. I never wanted my face on magazine covers or invitations to celebrity parties. Walter and I built something together, but we always stayed in the background. I hired talented people to run the day-to-day operations. I appointed a CEO 8 years ago, a brilliant man named Jonathan, who shared my vision. I stepped back from public life almost entirely. We kept our old house in Connecticut. It was not a mansion, just a comfortable home with a big garden where Walter grew tomatoes every summer. We drove regular cars. We shopped at regular stores. We lived simply because that is what made us happy. Walter used to say that real value does not need to announce itself. The most precious things in life are often invisible to people who only look at surfaces. He was a professor of literature, not a businessman. But he understood something that most people never learn. I carried that philosophy into everything I did. My designs were famous for their simplicity. Clean lines, no flashy logos. The beauty was in the details you could not see at first glance. The hand stitching, the rare fabrics, the hours of craftsmanship in every seam. People who understood fashion recognized Maison Elise instantly. People who did not might walk right past it without a second look. That was intentional. I never wanted to dress people who needed labels to feel important. I wanted to dress people who knew their own worth. Our son Gregory was born when I was 26. He was our only child, our miracle, our joy. Walter and I made a conscious decision not to spoil him with the wealth we were accumulating. We did not tell him how much money we had. We did not buy him expensive toys or send him to elite private schools. We raised him to work hard and value substance over appearance. Gregory became an architect. He put himself through graduate school with scholarships and part-time jobs. He built his own career without any help from us. We were so proud of him. 3 years ago, Gregory introduced us to Kristen. She was his girlfriend's soon-to-be fiancée. She worked in the fashion industry, she said, in communications and public relations. I recognized the company name immediately when Gregory mentioned it. Maison Elise, my company, my creation. The irony was not lost on me, but I did not say anything. I wanted to observe Kristen without the distortion of her knowing who I was. I wanted to see how she treated people when she thought there was nothing to gain. The first time she came to our house, she looked around with barely concealed disappointment. I saw her eyes scanning the modest furniture, the simple decor, the lack of anything that screamed wealth. She was polite enough, but there was something underneath her smile, a kind of condescension, like she was doing us a favor by being there. Walter noticed it too. After she left, he said to me, "Gregory loves her, so we will give her a chance. But watch carefully, Bernice. People reveal themselves eventually." The wedding was simple at Gregory's request. Kristen wanted something extravagant, but Gregory insisted on keeping it small. She did not argue openly, but I could see the frustration in her eyes. She thought she was marrying into a family with limited resources. She did not know what she did not know. After the wedding, Kristen seemed to pull Gregory away from us bit by bit. Phone calls became less frequent. Visits became shorter. There was always an excuse. Work was busy. They had plans. They were tired. I tried not to take it personally. Young couples need space to build their own lives. But I missed my son, and I worried about the influence Kristen had on him. Then one October night, everything changed. Walter was 61 years old. He had been healthy his whole life, strong, vibrant, full of ideas and laughter and love. But hearts do not always warn you when they are ready to stop. He went to sleep beside me like he had done for 35 years. And sometime in the night, quietly, peacefully, his heart simply gave out. I woke up in the morning and reached for him. His hand was cold. I knew before I even opened my eyes fully. I knew he was gone. The doctor said it was a massive cardiac event. They said he did not suffer. They said it happened quickly. But none of that mattered. The man who had believed in me, supported me, loved me unconditionally for 35 years was gone. And I was alone. The days after Walter died exist in my memory like fragments of a broken mirror, sharp, disjointed, painful to touch. Dorothy, our housekeeper of 20 years, took care of everything practical. She handled the phone calls and the paperwork and the endless stream of decisions that death requires. I could not have managed without her. Gregory flew home immediately. He walked through the door and collapsed into my arms, sobbing like he had when he was a little boy with a scraped knee. My strong, capable son reduced to tears in my kitchen. I held him and we cried together. Kristen arrived with him, but her presence felt different. She looked around the house with that same appraising gaze I remembered from her first visit. At one point, when she thought I could not hear, she whispered to Gregory, "I do not understand why your parents lived so simply. This house is so old." Gregory tried to explain. He told her that his parents valued experiences over possessions, that we chose to live modestly despite having options. Kristen made a sound that was half laugh, half dismissal. She did not believe him. She thought he was making excuses for our poverty. I said nothing. My husband had just died. I did not have the energy to correct her assumptions. The funeral was scheduled for the following Saturday. I spent the days leading up to it in a fog of grief, trying to write a eulogy that could possibly capture who Walter was. How do you summarize 35 years of love in a few paragraphs? How do you explain what someone meant to you when words feel so inadequate? 2 days before the funeral, I opened my closet to choose what to wear. I have a lot of clothes. Most of them I designed myself. But this was not about fashion. This was about saying goodbye to my husband. I needed something that felt right. My hand stopped on a black dress hanging near the back. I had made it 10 years earlier. It was the first prototype for what became Maison Elise's most exclusive line, the Whisper Collection. Named because the beauty was so subtle, you had to lean in close to notice it. The dress looked simple: black silk, clean silhouette, no embellishments visible to the casual eye. But the fabric was hand-woven Italian silk, produced by a family in Como who had been making textiles for 400 years. The stitching was done entirely by hand, with thread dyed to match the exact shade of the fabric. Every seam took 3 hours of meticulous work, and hidden in the lining, visible only to someone who knew exactly where to look, were delicate embroidered flowers. Walter's favorite, the ones that grew in our garden every spring. Only 5 of these dresses existed in the world. The market value of each one was $80,000. But this one was not for sale at any price. This one was mine. Walter had seen me wearing it once years ago at a private event for Maison Elise's anniversary. He had looked at me across the room with such love in his eyes that I never forgot it. He had said, "That dress is like you, Bernice, beautiful in ways most people will never understand." I took it out of the closet and held it against my chest. Yes, this was what I would wear to say goodbye. The night before the funeral, Kristen knocked on my bedroom door. She said she wanted to check on me, see how I was holding up. Her voice was syrupy, the kind of false sweetness that makes my skin crawl. She glanced at the dress laid out on my bed. Her eyebrows went up slightly. "You are wearing that tomorrow?" she asked. I nodded. She tilted her head, examining it with what she clearly thought was expert judgment. "Oh, okay. I mean, it is very plain, but I guess if you like it." I said nothing. There was nothing to say. Kristen smoothed down her own outfit, a designer ensemble. She had mentioned the price of at least 3 times since arriving. She talked about the dress she had brought for the funeral, a black Dior, $3,000. She said she wanted to look appropriate. She said she wanted to represent the family well. The implication was clear. She would represent the family well because I clearly could not. After she left, I sat on the edge of my bed for a long time. My hands were shaking, but not with anger, with sadness. This was the woman my son had married. This was who he had chosen to build a life with. I thought about Walter, about what he would say. I could almost hear his voice. "Do not let her steal your peace, Bernice. You know who you are. That is all that matters." I lay down and tried to sleep. Tomorrow would be the hardest day of my life. The morning of the funeral was gray and cold. October in Connecticut can be beautiful with leaves turning gold and red. But that day, the sky was the color of wet concrete, and a bitter wind cut through everything. I dressed slowly. The black silk felt cool against my skin. I put on the pearl necklace Walter had given me on our wedding day. Simple, elegant, meaningful. I did not bother with much makeup. What was the point? My eyes would be red from crying no matter what. Gregory came to pick me up. He hugged me tightly at the door, and for a moment I saw his father in his face. The same gentle eyes, the same way of holding his shoulders when he was trying to be strong. Kristen was already in the car, scrolling through her phone. She was wearing the Dior dress she had mentioned so many times. Full makeup, designer handbag. She looked like she was going to a society luncheon, not a funeral. When I got into the back seat, she glanced at me in the rearview mirror. Her gaze moved from my face to my dress to my shoes and back again. She did not say anything, but her expression said everything. Disappointment. Pity. The look you give someone who does not know any better. Gregory asked if I was okay. I told him I was as okay as I could be. The drive to the church was quiet, except for the sound of Kristen's fingernails tapping on her phone screen. The church was already filling up when we arrived. Walter had touched so many lives over his 40 years of teaching. Former students came from across the country to pay their respects, colleagues from the university, friends from every chapter of our lives together. I saw Jonathan near the entrance. He was standing slightly apart from the crowd watching for me. When our eyes met, he walked over immediately. "Mrs. Founder," he said quietly, so only I could hear, "I am so deeply sorry for your loss. Mr. Walter was a wonderful man. Jonathan had met Walter many times over the years. They had developed their own friendship, bonding over shared interests in art and history. I took Jonathan's hands in mine and thanked him for coming. Kristen watched this exchange from a few feet away. I could see her trying to figure out who Jonathan was, why he seemed so reverential toward me. She probably assumed he was some family friend with outdated social manners. Margaret, my best friend since college, saved me a seat in the front pew. She had been there through everything, my early struggles, my success, my marriage, and now this. She took my hand and held it through the entire service without letting go once. Pastor Thomas spoke about Walter's legacy, his dedication to his students, his love for literature, his gentle spirit. Then Gregory stood up and gave a beautiful eulogy about growing up with a father who always made time to listen, who always believed the best in people, who taught him that character matters more than achievement. When it was my turn, I walked to the podium on legs that felt like they might collapse beneath me. I looked out at all those faces, people who had loved Walter, people who would miss him too, and I spoke from my heart. I talked about meeting him in that library, about our life together, about the way he made me laugh even after 35 years, about how he was not just my husband, but my partner, my confidant, my best friend. By the end, I could barely speak through the tears. But I finished. For Walter, I finished. After the service, everyone gathered outside the church while the pallbearers prepared to move the casket. The wind had picked up, sending leaves skittering across the pavement. People huddled in small groups, speaking in low voices. I was standing near the church entrance, talking quietly with one of Walter's former colleagues, when I heard it. Kristen's voice, not particularly quiet, carrying easily on the wind. "Can you believe what my mother-in-law is wearing?" she was saying to a group of women. Her friends, I assumed, or people she was trying to impress. "Look at that dress. It looks like something from a department store clearance rack." I am embarrassed for her, honestly. I froze. My back was to her, so she did not realize I was within earshot. One of the women asked what I did for a living. Kristen laughed. "I do not really know. Some kind of retired teacher, maybe. They do not have any money. You should see their house. It is ancient. I keep telling Gregory we need to help them move somewhere nicer, but you know how stubborn old people can be." Another woman asked why Gregory had married into a family like that. Kristen lowered her voice, but not enough. "Gregory is different. He is successful on his own, but his parents are just so—" She paused, searching for the word classless. That dress probably cost $50, maybe less. The women laughed, polite, uncomfortable laughs, but laughs nonetheless. I stood there 10 feet away, listening to my daughter-in-law mock me at my husband's funeral, mock the dress I had made with my own hands, mock our home, mock our life, mock everything Walter and I had built together. My hands clenched at my sides. I felt Margaret's presence beside me. She had heard everything too. I saw her start to move toward Kristen, her face flushed with anger, but I put my hand on her arm. "Not here," I whispered. "Not today." We walked away, toward the casket, toward Walter. I placed my hand on the cold wooden surface and leaned in close. "I am sorry you had to hear that," I whispered. "But you know me. I will not let this go unanswered." The wind shifted slightly, almost like a response. I straightened my spine and lifted my chin. The time would come, but not today. The days following the funeral were a strange mixture of grief and revelation. We held a small reception at the house after the burial. Dorothy had prepared food, and people came and went throughout the afternoon, offering condolences, sharing memories of Walter. I moved through it all in a daze, accepting hugs and handshakes and murmured words of sympathy. Kristen spent most of the reception complaining. The food was too plain, the house was too cramped, the guests were too old. She whispered these criticisms to Gregory when she thought no one was listening, but I heard. I heard everything. At one point, Dorothy pulled me aside in the kitchen. "Mrs. Bernice," she said, her voice tight with barely controlled anger, "that woman has been asking questions all afternoon about your finances, about the house, about Mr. Walter's will." I felt my stomach turn. Asking who? Dorothy's eyes flickered toward the living room where Kristen was holding court with a glass of wine. Her. I thanked Dorothy and told her not to worry, but inside something hardened. My husband was barely in the ground, and my daughter-in-law was already calculating what she might inherit. Later that evening, Margaret stayed behind after everyone else had left. We sat in the kitchen together drinking tea that neither of us wanted. I heard what she said at the church, Margaret told me, and what Dorothy mentioned about the questions. Bernice, that woman is a vulture. I know, I said. What are you going to do? I stared into my tea for a long moment. I am going to wait, and then I am going to act. The next few days I tried to focus on mourning Walter, on processing the enormity of losing him, but Kristen's words kept echoing in my mind. Classless, cheap, embarrassing. I thought about calling Gregory, telling him everything, but what good would that do? He loved Kristen. He would defend her. It would only drive a wedge between us. So I took a different approach. 1 week after the funeral, I called Jonathan at Maison Elise. Jonathan, I said, I need some information about an employee. He was quiet for a moment. Which employee? Kristen Marshall, my daughter-in-law. Jonathan exhaled slowly. Mrs. Founder, I have been wanting to talk to you about her for months, but given the family connection, I was not sure how to bring it up. Tell me everything. What followed was a 30-minute conversation that confirmed my worst suspicions and revealed new ones I had not even considered. Kristen had been employed at Maison Elise for 2 years. Her performance reviews were mediocre at best. She was frequently late to work. She treated junior staff members poorly, sometimes reducing them to tears with her criticism. Multiple complaints had been filed against her for hostile workplace behavior, but that was not all. 3 months ago, Jonathan explained our finance team noticed some irregularities in the PR department's expense reports. Kristen had been submitting receipts for events and vendor payments that did not match our records. We did a full audit. What did you find? She has been embezzling money. Small amounts at first, then larger ones. Over the past 2 years, she has taken approximately $15,000 through fraudulent expense claims. We also found evidence that she has been accepting kickbacks from certain vendors in exchange for steering business their way. I closed my eyes. $15,000. Fraud. Kickbacks. Jonathan continued, I have documented everything, but I did not take action because I knew she was your daughter-in-law. I was not sure if you wanted to handle it differently given the personal connection. I opened my eyes. Send me everything. Every document. Every piece of evidence. The email arrived within the hour. I spent that night reading through it all. Financial records, email exchanges, witness statements from employees Kristen had bullied or threatened. A pattern of dishonesty and cruelty that spanned her entire time at my company. My company. The company I had built from nothing. The company named after my mother. The next day I called Gregory. I did not mention Kristen at all. I just asked him to come visit me. Alone. He arrived on Saturday afternoon looking tired and worried. We sat in the living room where he had played as a child, where Walter had read him bedtime stories, where our family had shared countless meals and conversations. How are you really doing? He asked me. I am surviving, I told him, day by day. But I wanted to ask about you, about your life, about your marriage. Gregory shifted uncomfortably. What about it? Are you happy? He did not answer immediately. That pause told me everything. Marriage is complicated, he finally said. Kristen has her difficult moments, but we are working on it. I nodded slowly. Does she... I hesitated. Does she treat you well? His jaw tightened. Mom, what is this about? I did not push further. I just told him I loved him and wanted him to be happy, truly happy. He hugged me before he left, and I held on a little longer than usual. That night I sat alone in Walter's study. His books still lined the shelves. His reading glasses still sat on the desk where he had left them. The room still smelled faintly of him, and I had to fight back tears. I picked up the folder of evidence against Kristen. I looked at the termination letter that Maison Elise's legal department had prepared at my request. All I had to do was sign it. I held the pen in my hand for a long time. This was not revenge, I told myself. This was justice. Kristen had stolen from my company, mistreated my employees, and yes, she had also humiliated me on the worst day of my life. But I was not firing her because she called my dress cheap. I was firing her because she was a liar and a thief. I signed the letter, but I did not send it yet. I wanted to do this properly, face to face. I wanted her to know exactly who she had been mocking. 2 weeks after the funeral, I put on a black suit I had designed myself. Simple, elegant, impeccably tailored. I drove into Manhattan for the first time in months. The Maison Elise headquarters occupied 3 floors of a building in the fashion district. I had not been there in over a year. I preferred to let Jonathan handle the daily operations while I focused on design concepts from home. But today was different. Jonathan met me in the lobby. He looked nervous, which was unusual for him. He was a confident man who had successfully run a multi-million-dollar company for 8 years. But he knew what was about to happen. "Everything is ready," he said as we walked toward the elevator. "She is on the 4th floor. I have scheduled a staff meeting for the communications team in 30 minutes. I thought you might want to address them first." "Perfect." The elevator doors opened onto a sleek, modern office space. Glass walls, designer furniture, carefully curated art on every surface. This was the public face of my company, and I was proud of what it had become. Employees looked up as I walked past. Some recognized me immediately, their eyes widening in surprise. Others were too young to know who I was. They probably thought I was just another executive. Jonathan led me to the large conference room where the communications team was gathering. I could see Kristen through the glass walls sitting in the front row scrolling through her phone. She had no idea what was coming. When everyone was seated, Jonathan stepped to the front of the room. He asked for attention and waited until the chatter died down. "Today, we have a very special visitor," he announced. "Many of you have never had the opportunity to meet her in person. She prefers to work behind the scenes. But she is the reason all of us have jobs. She is the reason Maison Elise exists." I saw Kristen look up from her phone, curiosity flickering across her face. "Please welcome the founder of Maison Elise." Jonathan continued, "Our visionary, our leader, Mrs. Bernice Marshall." I stepped into the room. The expression on Kristen's face was something I will never forget. First confusion, then recognition, then absolute terror. Her mouth opened and closed several times without producing any sound. The color drained from her cheeks so completely that she looked almost gray. Her phone slipped from her fingers and clattered onto the table. I smiled politely at the room. "Thank you, Jonathan, and thank you all for your hard work." I delivered a short speech about the company's values, about integrity, about treating every person with respect regardless of their title or position, about how Maison Elise was built on the principle that true beauty comes from within. I did not look at Kristen while I spoke. I did not need to. I could feel her panic radiating across the room like heat from a fire. When I finished, I asked to see Kristen in private, in the CEO's office. She stood up on shaking legs and followed me down the hallway. Every step seemed to take enormous effort. By the time we reached Jonathan's office, she looked like she might collapse. I sat down behind Jonathan's desk. He stood by the door. Kristen remained standing, unable to meet my eyes. "Please," she started. "Mrs. Marshall, Bernice, Mom." I did not know. I held up my hand. "Let me be very clear about something. This is not about the funeral. This is not about what you said about my dress." I pushed the folder across the desk toward her. "This is about $15,000 you have stolen from my company over the past 2 years. This is about fraudulent expense reports and vendor kickbacks. This is about multiple HR complaints from employees you have bullied and mistreated." Kristen's face crumpled. "No, those are lies. Someone is setting me up." I opened the folder and spread the evidence across the desk. Emails in her name, bank records showing deposits that corresponded exactly to inflated expense claims, witness statements from 3 different employees describing her abusive behavior. "Every piece of this has been verified by our legal team," I said calmly. "The evidence is irrefutable." Kristen started to cry. Real tears, not the performative kind I had seen her use on Gregory. "Please, I am sorry. I made mistakes. I was under so much pressure. I can pay it back. I can change." I looked at her for a long moment. This woman who had married my son. This woman who had mocked me at my husband's funeral. This woman who had stolen from my company while looking down on me for being poor. "You know what the saddest part is," I said quietly. "If you had treated me with basic human decency, I might never have looked into your work history. I might have let things slide because you are family." I paused. "But you did not just insult me. You insulted my husband's memory. You insulted his funeral. You stood there in your $3,000 dress and called me classless while wearing a logo from a company I built from nothing. I stood up and walked around the desk until I was standing directly in front of her. That dress you mocked cost $80,000. I made it with my own hands, every stitch, every seam. It is part of a collection that only 5 people in the world own, and I chose to wear it because it was my husband's favorite. Kristen was sobbing openly now. I did not know. How could I know? You never told anyone. I nodded. That is exactly the point. I should not have to tell anyone. A person's value does not depend on their net worth or their wardrobe. You should have treated me with respect because I am a human being, because I am your husband's mother, because basic decency is not something you earn with money. I picked up the termination letter from the desk and handed it to her. Your employment with Maison Elise is terminated effective immediately. You will receive no severance. Given the circumstances, we have chosen not to pursue criminal charges for the embezzlement, but that decision can be revisited if you cause any further problems. Kristen took the letter with trembling hands. Her makeup was running down her face in black streaks. You have 30 minutes to collect your personal belongings and leave the building. Security will escort you. I walked past her toward the door. What about Gregory? She called out desperately. What about our marriage? I stopped but did not turn around. That is between you and Gregory, but I suspect when he sees this evidence, he will have some questions of his own. I walked out of the office without looking back. Gregory called me that night. His voice was strained, caught somewhere between anger and confusion. Mom, Kristen just told me she was fired. She says you did it. She says it was because of something she said at Dad's funeral. I was sitting in the living room looking at Walter's photograph on the mantel. That is not entirely accurate, I said. I fired her because she has been stealing from my company for 2 years, and because she has been treating employees so badly that we have a stack of HR complaints against her. Silence on the other end. I am sending you the evidence right now, I continued. Everything. The financial records, the emails, the witness statements. Look at it yourself. Then tell me if I made the wrong decision. I sent the email while we were still on the phone. I could hear Gregory's computer ping with the notification. Mom? He said slowly. What do you mean your company? You are retired. You were a teacher. I closed my eyes. Gregory, I have not been entirely honest with you about our family's finances. Your father and I made a choice when you were young to raise you without the burden of wealth. We wanted you to make your own way in the world, and you did. Beautifully. I took a breath. But the truth is, I founded Maison Elise 30 years ago, the fashion brand, the one Kristen worked for. I am still the majority shareholder and a member of the board. Your father and I just chose to live simply because that is what made us happy. The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Gregory finally spoke. You are telling me that my mother is one of the most successful fashion designers in the country, and I never knew. I smiled despite the heaviness in my heart. Not with sweetheart. Am. He let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. Why did you never tell me? Because I wanted you to know that success is not about money or fame. I wanted you to understand that a person's worth comes from their character, not their bank account. Your father and I lived our values every day. We did not need luxury to be happy. We had each other. We had you. That was enough. Gregory was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I am looking at the documents you sent. About Kristen. And... His voice hardened. She lied to me. About a lot of things, apparently. Not just the money. I waited. I found some other things, too, he continued. Tonight, after she told me what happened. Credit card statements she had been hiding. Purchases I never knew about. Money just disappearing from our accounts. I am sorry, Gregory. Do not be, he said. I should have seen it sooner. I think I did see it. I just did not want to admit it. What are you going to do? I do not know yet. But I need to come home. Can I stay with you for a while? I need time to think. Of course, I said. This is always your home. He arrived 2 days later with a suitcase and dark circles under his eyes. He looked like he had aged 5 years in 48 hours. We sat at the kitchen table where he had done his homework as a child, and he told me everything. Kristen had been lying to him since before they got married, about her background, about her finances, about her ambitions. She had seen Gregory as a stepping stone, assuming his family must have money because he was successful. When she discovered otherwise, she had started stealing from work to fund the lifestyle she believed she deserved. "She did not love me," Gregory said flatly. "I think she loved the idea of me, what I could give her." I reached across the table and held his hand. "I am so sorry." He shook his head. "Do not be. I made this choice." I ignored the warning signs. I let myself believe what I wanted to believe instead of what was actually true. We sat together for a long time, not talking, just being there. Mother and son grieving different losses. In the weeks that followed, Gregory filed for separation. Kristen tried everything to stop it. She called him constantly, alternating between apologies and threats. She showed up at the house once, but Dorothy refused to let her in. She even tried contacting me directly, sending long emails begging for forgiveness, swearing she had changed. I did not respond to any of them. There was nothing left to say. Our lawyers sent her a formal warning about harassment. After that, the calls and emails finally stopped. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. Kristen tried to claim alimony, but her documented embezzlement made that impossible. She walked away with nothing but the debt she had accumulated during their marriage. I heard later that she had moved to another city, started over. I do not know what became of her, and honestly, I do not care. She is no longer part of our lives. That is enough. Time has a way of softening edges. It has been a year since Walter died, a year since that terrible day at the church, a year since I looked my daughter-in-law in the eye and handed her a termination letter. The pain has not disappeared. I do not think it ever fully will, but it has changed shape, become something I can carry without being crushed. I have learned to live alone again, though I never really feel alone. Walter is everywhere in this house, in the books on his shelves, in the garden he planted, in the coffee mug he used every morning that I still cannot bring myself to put away. He is gone, but he is also still here, woven into every corner of my life. I have started writing, not fashion designs, though I still do that occasionally, but memories, stories, the history of Maison Elise, the story of a girl from Newark who dreamed impossible dreams and made them real. I am writing it for Gregory, for his future children if he has them, for anyone who needs to know that where you start does not determine where you finish. Margaret comes over every Wednesday for lunch. We talk about everything and nothing. She makes me laugh, which is a gift beyond measure. Friends like her are rare. I do not take her for granted. I have made new friends too. I joined an art class at the community center, something I never had time for when I was running a company. The other students are mostly retired people like me, people with stories and wisdom and time to share. We paint terrible watercolors together, and it brings me more joy than I expected. Gregory visits every weekend now. Our relationship has grown deeper since everything happened. He understands things about me he never knew before, and I understand him better too. He is healing slowly. He went through therapy after the divorce, working through not just the end of his marriage, but the realization that he had been deceived so thoroughly by someone he loved. Last month, he told me he had started seeing someone new, a woman he met at an architecture conference. "She is kind," he said, "genuine. She does not care about money or status. She just likes me." I smiled at him. "That is what you deserve." "I know," he said. "I know that now." Maison Elise celebrated its 30th anniversary this spring. Jonathan insisted that I attend the gala. I tried to refuse, but he would not take no for an answer. "You built this company," he said. "You deserve to be honored." So I went. I wore the black dress, the same one from Walter's funeral, the one Kristen had mocked, the one that cost $80,000 and looked like it cost $50,000. When I stepped onto the stage to receive my award, the applause was overwhelming. Hundreds of people standing, clapping, celebrating what I had created. I looked out at all those faces and I felt Walter beside me. I felt him smiling. "My mother taught me something important when I was young," I said into the microphone. "She taught me that the most beautiful garments are the ones made with love, not with expensive materials or famous labels. Just love. Every stitch, every seam, every careful choice. That is what I tried to bring to Maison Elise, and that is what I will always believe." I looked down at my dress, at the invisible embroidery hidden in the lining, at the flowers Walter had loved. True value. I continued does not announce itself. It does not need to. The most precious things in life are often invisible to people who only look at surfaces. My husband taught me that, and I will carry that lesson with me for the rest of my days. Gregory was in the front row. He was crying. Not sad tears, proud ones. After the gala, he drove me home. We sat in the driveway for a few minutes before going inside. "Mom," he said, "I want you to know how much I admire you, not because of the company or the money, but because of who you are, how you live, what you taught me without ever saying a word." I reached over and held his hand. "Your father would be so proud of you," I said. "I am so proud of you." He nodded, blinking back more tears. We went inside together. Dorothy had left the porch light on. The house was warm and smelled like the soup she had prepared before leaving. I am home, I thought. I am still here. And life goes on. Walter's favorite Robert Frost quote came back to me then, the one I had found bookmarked the night before his funeral. In 3 words, I can sum up everything I have learned about life. It goes on. It does. It goes on. With sorrow and joy intertwined, with loss and love walking hand in hand, with endings that are also beginnings. If you are watching this and you have ever been judged by someone who did not know your worth, I want you to remember something. Their opinion does not define you. Their cruelty reflects on them, not on you. You know who you are. That is all that matters. The people who deserve to be in your life will see you clearly. They will recognize your value without you having to prove it. And the people who cannot see past the surface well, they will eventually reveal themselves. And when they do, you will know exactly what to do. Do not waste your energy trying to convince anyone of your worth. Just live it, every day, in every choice you make, in how you treat others, in how you treat yourself. That is the real legacy. Not the dresses I designed or the company I built, but the way I chose to move through the world, with integrity, with grace, with a quiet strength that does not need to shout. Walter knew that. He lived it. And he taught me to do the same. I miss him every single day, but I am not alone. I carry him with me in everything I do, and that, my friends, is the end of my story. If you made it this far, I want to thank you for listening, for taking this journey with me. I have a question for you. Have you ever been underestimated by someone who did not know the real you? How did you handle it? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this video touched you in any way, please take a moment to hit the like button. It helps more than you know. And if you have not already, subscribed to this channel so you do not miss more stories like this one. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today, someone who might be feeling invisible or undervalued. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your time and your attention. I wish you peace in your heart, clarity in your mind, and the wisdom to know your own worth no matter what anyone else might say. Take care of yourselves and be kind to each other. Until next time.